Salve, salve, amigos da astronomia em todo mundo. Muito boa tarde. Estou entrando aqui um pouco atrasado, mas entrando ao vivo aqui com vocês com a sessão hoje histórica aí, né, do Congresso norte-americano sobre os famosos UAPs ou OVNIs ou Ufos ou como você quer que seja chamado. Então, hoje estão aí reunidos para essa sessão aí, digamos, bem polêmica, né? Dizem aí que hoje tudo virá à tona. Será? Bem, ó, isso aí é a primeira coisa que eles já estão discutindo, que é o lance de você não ter uma maneira formal de fazer relatos sobre o APs, tá? Chegou pro gol do Corinthians, boa, garoto. Acho que hoje sai sobre a Terra plana, não sei, cara, mas sobre OVNIs aí a galera tá na luta aí, tá tentando, viu? Vamos ver se é hoje que vai sair alguma coisa. Tá aí. Então eles estão. Deixa eu fazer um resumo aqui inicial para vocês, né? Do que eles estão falando. Eles estão falando muito aí baseado nos relatos de pilotos, né? Muito bem. Relato, né? É aquele negócio que eu falo para vocês sempre, né? A galera me critica bastante, né? Mas, por exemplo, né? Você não tem um padrão de relatos, tá? Nem para pilotos comerciais e nem para pilotos militares. O que teria que ter ainda uma divisão nesses padrões, né? Então tem vários problemas nisso aí. Primeiro, você não tem um, um padrão nos relatos. Segundo, os pilotos não querem relatar, porque tem um problema seríssimo que a gente chama de estigma, né? O cara fica estigmatizado como o cara que viu um UFO ou que ele não soube ver e tal. Como é um negócio que ele não tem certeza, ele prefere não relatar. Então tem esse lance do estigma também, que é muito importante. E terceiro, e não menos importante, tem o fato tanto da segurança nacional, certo, dos Estados Unidos, quando é o caso de pilotos militares, como também das empresas quando é piloto comercial. Então, você reúne tudo isso, isso cria um empecilho muito grande no que diz respeito a relatos. Por isso que o trabalho, tanto que a NASA quer fazer, como até o Congresso americano propõe fazer, é você ter sensores, tá? Sensores melhores para poder registrar. Esse cara aqui do meio, tá? É o famoso aí da hora, que é o Gersh, né? Perguntou se os Estados Unidos têm algum UAP capturado. Ele falou que tem, mas ele não sabe aonde, né? Tá aí, os membros do comitê, né? Tá sem áudio aí para vocês? Ah, tá sem áudio, peraí. Tá sem áudio mesmo. Eu esqueci aqui de fazer um negócio. Olha lá. Ó.
Working area, we would see these objects being at 0.0 Mach, that's 0 airspeed, over certain pieces of the ground. So what that means, just like a river, if you throw a bobber in, it's going to float downstream. These objects were staying completely stationary in Category 4 hurricane winds. These same objects would then accelerate to supersonic speeds, 1.1.
Tá perguntando se eles não são realmente aviões, tá?
And quick behaviors that I don't have an explanation for.
Okay. Have you spoken to commercial and military pilots that have seen these off of our East Coast?
Tá aí, comerciais e militares, né, que viram.
Mr. Favor, I noticed that in the Tic Tac video.
Tic-tac. O tic-tac, o vídeo de tic-tac é aquele famoso, né, do UFO que fica ali, tá?
App.
That's correct.
Yes, sir. I just want to make that because my daughter corrected me on that and called me a boomer and said, "Hey, boomer," and I said, "No, baby, it's tic-tac like the candy. You're gonna have to just look it up."
Ah, ele sai falando por que era o tic-tac, né? Fez uma brincadeirinha ali.
It's a day of many firsts. It's a miracle that we're having this meeting, and it's also a miracle that my wife has put up with me for 9 years today. Today is my anniversary, so I want to tell my wife happy anniversary and that I love her very much. As she likes to say, this 9 years have been the best 2 years of her life. So,
falando aí. Tá dando uma zoada, né?
Mr. Favor, what astonished you the most about the flight capabilities of these?
O que mais deixou ele impressionado com as capacidades de voo do tic-tac?
Absolute performance. It was.
And you're not aware of any other objects that anybody in the world has.
Falando que ele está perguntando se alguma nave no mundo, alguma outra nave conhecida teria essa capacidade.
Are you aware of any other reconnaissance platforms that have tracked or recorded the Tic Tac's maneuvers? Maybe the NORAD system or any of the others?
I am not.
Okay. Mr. Grush. Thank you for being here, brother. Thank you all very much. Have you faced any retaliation or reprisals for any of your testimony or anything on these lines?
Tá falando se ele teve alguma retaliação sobre os testemunhos que ele deu recentemente.
Whistleblower reprisal investigation on my behalf, and I don't want to compromise that investigation by providing.
Falando aí que tem uma investigação em cima dele, né, sobre as coisas que ele falou, né, sobre as informações que ele deu.
Very unfortunate some of the tactics they used to.
Ele falando que é uma tática muito infeliz, né?
Personally, to be quite frank, yeah.
It's very unfortunate, as they say, when you're
falando aí que é muito infeliz, né? Muito não é legal, né, ter essa
harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal these extraterrestrial technology.
Yes.
Falando que é uma.
Have anyone been murdered that you would think that you know of?
Alguém foi assassinado?
I have to be careful asking that question. I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities.
Maybe in a if we could get in a confidential area skiff, we could talk about that. But unfortunately, we were denied access.
Infelizmente, eles não têm acesso às áreas lá onde dizem que estão capturados as naves alienígenas, tá?
Mr. Favor, do you believe that you witnessed an additional object under the water?
Você acredita que objetos foram testemunhados ali abaixo da água? Estão relacionados com esse encontro aí?
Okay, it was not the same object though that you were looking at, correct?
No, we actually joked.
Tá falando que são dois eventos diferentes, os objetos não é o mesmo objeto que tem capacidade de voar e mergulhar, tá? Ele sai também.
In another instance, we're told about the capabilities of a jamming during viewing of when there were some people chasing some of these objects. Did you experience any of that jamming or interrupting your radar or weapons system?
My crew that launched after we landed experienced significant jamming to the APG-73 radar, which was what we had on.
Falando aí do pessoal que trabalha com os radares, né? Tá aí, o PG-73 é o tipo de radar. Como que os radares podem funcionar para detectar todas essas coisas, tá?
Are you aware of any of our enemies that have that capability?
No.
Tinha um tic-tac e um outro, isso aí.
Note for the record that like George Knapp breaking Area 51. He's the reason I knew about that. And the reason I know about the Tic Tacs is Leslie Keene from New York Times article, and I would encourage everybody to read that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yield back to you for no time.
Very good. Mr. Raskin?
Thank you,
Vamos
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Graves, you reported UAP encounters during training flights, I think.
Falando que teve,
And since
relataram
come forward to warn the
encontro com os APs
that,
durante
these
momentos de
encounters may be
treinamento,
putting pilots at risk.
que poderia colocar os pilotos em risco.
My first question is,
Primeira questão é
identified these as taking place on the East Coast. Is it just on the East Coast where these
perguntando se é só na
encounters,
costa leste dos Estados
have
Unidos
been
que aconteceu
reported?
esses
No, since
encontros.
the events initially occurred, I've learned that the objects have been detected essentially where all operations, Navy operations are being conducted.
Falando que
across the world.
esses
And that's
UAPs
from,
foram detectados
the
em
ultimate
operações
anomaly
da Marinha
resolution office
Americana.
reporting.
All right, can you describe your experience after you decided to come forward and go public with your
Falando qual foi sua experiência
experience?
depois que você decidiu
Certainly.
ir para o
Like many
público
others, in
falar sobre
2017, I saw
tudo
the
isso,
New
né?
York Times article come out as well. And for me, it was special because I recognized the voices on the video. I recognized
Falando que para ele foi especial
video
porque ele
itself,
reconheceu
like,
as
when it
vozes
was
nos
taken, I
vídeos,
see
né?
when it was
Reconheceu a
debriefed.
voz dele mesmo.
And so that was kind of shook me because I realized that this problem was still ongoing. And so I reached out to
E
colleagues
aí ele
back
pôde
on the East
perceber,
Coast,
então, né, o problema que
realized
estava
that this was still a
acontecendo
safety risk that they were
e
dealing
chegar
with,
nos
that they
colegas dele da
essentially hit a
costa
wall with
leste,
how they
né,
could move
e
forward on
perceber
this
que eles ainda
conversation.
estavam
It
lidando
was
com
at that
tudo
point when I
isso.
decided to try to move the conversation forward myself.
Por isso que ele
Are there
resolveu
common
dar
characteristics to
sequência,
the
porque era tudo
UAPs that
pessoas
have
que ele
been
conhecia
cited by different
pessoalmente,
pilots?
incluindo
And
ele,
can you
né?
describe what the convergence of descriptions is?
Certainly. We were primarily seeing dark gray or black cubes inside of a clear sphere.
I'm sorry, dark gray or black cubes?
Yes,
Yeah.
inside of a clear sphere, where the apex or tip of
Falando
the
aí
cube
como
were
que eram os
touching inside
objetos,
of
né?
that sphere.
Cubos
And that was
pretos, né? Com
primarily what was being
esferas
reported when we
brilhantes
were able
dentro.
to gain a visual tally of these objects. That occurred over almost 8 years. And as far as I know, it's still occurring.
8
So
anos.
I take it that you're arguing what we need is real transparency in a reporting system so we can get some clarity
Tá, e
on what's
falando,
going
vai falar
on
de novo
out
da
there, because
coisa de
there are many
relatos, né?
pilots in
Que
your
eles tinham que ter
situation.
toda
But we
uma...
should have a way of
Aqui,
developing a
vai repetir aquele negócio que eu já falo para
systematic
vocês há
inventory of
muito
all of such
tempo, que é
encounters. Is that
preciso
right?
ter
Yes,
um
and I think we
padrão
need both
para fazer
transparency
os
and the
relatos. Ó,
reporting. We have
eu
the
penso que nós
reporting, but we need
precisamos
to
ter
make sure that
transparência
information
em
is
como
propagated to
relatar
commercial aviation
esses
as well
eventos,
as
tá?
the populace.
Mais ou menos nós temos que garantir esse,
Mr.
né?
Grush, what about you? What was your experience after you came forward?
Well, it's only been about 2 months or so, so I guess my experience has been overwhelming support from former colleagues.
Esse aí é o
of mine,
Grush, né? O
from
Grush é o
private
cara
messaging
de agora. Ele falou que a
and I do
experiência dele,
appreciate
cara, eu só
that.
tô 2 meses
But I
nesse
do have
olho
knowledge
desse
of,
furacão aí, né? Então eu não tô nem
active
perto do que essa
reprisal
galera aí
against
que já
myself
tá
and other
há 9,
colleagues.
8
It's very-
anos
very
mexendo com
upsetting
isso, tá?
to me.
Coming from where?
Certain senior leadership at previous agencies I was associated with. And that's all I'll say publicly, but I can provide more details in a closed environment.
Okay.
Ah, tá aí, ó.
Well, I
Tem
hope you
coisas,
understand
tá?
that,
Já vou deixar aqui
there would
claro
be
para vocês.
bipartisan
Tem
rejection
coisas
of
que eles
any
não vão
attempt,
falar aqui, tá? O cara
to
acabou de deixar ali
vilify,
claro.
demonize, or engage in other reprisals against our witnesses and people who are telling the truth
Tem
from
coisas
their
que eles não
perspective.
vão falar.
Yeah, there were certain colleagues of mine that were brutally administratively attacked. And it, actually makes me very upset as a leader to see that happen to other
Falando que a
coworkers
maneira
and
como ele foi
actually
tratado aí
superiors
deixou
of
ele
mine
muito
over the last 3
desapontado,
years.
porque ele
How
era,
do you
ele
account
era um
for that
líder ali, né?
response? That seems
Naquela
like a
coisa
bizarre
toda,
response.
e ele não,
I call it administrative
ele não
terrorism.
podia,
That's their quiver. They told
segundo
me
ele, né?
remarks, to silence people, especially,
Ele não podia ser
the
tratado do
career
jeito que
government service cares
ele,
about
que ele
their
foi,
career,
né?
cares about their clearance, their reputation to climb the ladder. And when you threaten that career path, a lot of people back off. But I'm here to represent those people. So.
Mr. Fravor, what about you? What has your experience been since you've come forward with your perspective on this?
Actually, I've been treated very well. And the 6 people that were involved, myself included, all of them have or will be retiring from the military as 05s or 06s. And all
Sai
my
falando
friends
que ele
that are
foi-
very senior
Esse
reinforced
cara
that.
aí, ele
I've
começou
talked to them,
perguntando primeiro
they believe,
das...
they understand there's a problem. And
Primeiro,
I was actually treated
ele
really
está
well.
perguntando
And what is
das
your
experiências
general
que cada um
interpretation,
teve com o lance aí da...
these phenomena? Or what is your current thinking of trying
de
to make sense
estar
of them?
trazendo ao
Well, I'll
público, né,
say,
todos
you know, I'm
esses
not like a
relatos e
UFO
todas essas
fanatic.
coisas, tá?
It's not me, but I will tell you that what we saw with 4 sets of eyes over a 5-minute period, still, there's nothing, we have nothing close to it. It was amazing to see. I told my buddy I wanted to fly it, but yeah, it's just an incredible technology.
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I'll yield back to you.
Aí, assim, na verdade,
Thanks.
galera,
On to Ms. Luna.
são muitas perguntas muito
Mr.
gerais,
Brush,
tá?
in speaking to
Muito
you
gerais.
yesterday, I just wanted to follow up on Representative Raskin's questions. In the last couple of years, have you had incidences that have caused you to be in fear for your life for addressing these issues?
Yes, personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want everyone to note that he's coming forward in fear of his life. To put in perspective, if they were really not scared about this information coming out, why would someone be intimidated like that?
Aí tá falando, né, do problema
To your
de
knowledge,
deles terem
are
relatado e tá com
NHIs
problema de
working with
risco de
adversarial
vida,
foreign
tá?
governments in either technology exchange programs or back engineering programs?
I don't have data on that. I'm not sure.
Have
Esse
you
cara aí tá-
heard or you had people come forward to present that evidence?
Deixa eu responder umas
Not that
perguntas de
particular
vocês aqui,
evidence.
falar algumas coisinhas.
Okay, on the 19th of April, Dr. Kirkpatrick, head of
E se
Aero,
algum deles for
had said
aliens
that
e
he
não
did
quiser
not find
falar,
any
pode ser
evidence of
também, né?
UAPs. You
Pode
also
ser também.
cited that you had,
Isso aí é um grande circo? Cara, eu acho um
briefed
pouco,
him on
tá?
information that you were
Eu
uncovering,
acho um
that
pouco,
he did
tá?
not follow up with you.
Qual o tema em
The
questão?
items
Para
that
quem
you
está
divulged
chegando
to
agora é o
different
seguinte,
email
galera.
sources,
Hoje
maybe.
ficou marcada uma sessão,
Yes, him and
uma
I had a
audiência pública do
classified
Congresso
conversation
americano, que é essa que nós estamos vendo aqui,
Arrow,
aonde os
July,
congressistas, que são
2022.
aqueles caras, estão
and I
arguindo, né? Estão perguntando, fazendo perguntas
him
para 3 pessoas aí. O Grush, o Graves e o outro cara ali que eu esqueci o nome, que são pessoas envolvidas nos relatos, né? Ou de trazer ao público, trazer à tona relatos de UAPs, que são os objetos, os OVNIs, né? Os UFOs, que agora a gente não chama mais de UFO, né? Que chama de
correct through Dopser,
fenômeno
the
aéreo
Application
não
Security Review.
identificado,
Just
tá?
to remind
Então, eles
their
trouxeram
decision
várias
from a
coisas. Esse
security
aqui que está
perspective,
falando agora, para quem não
these are my
sabe,
own
que é o
personal views and
Grush,
opinions.
ele é o que está há 2, 3
Okay,
meses
I'm asking
atrás
that, though,
falando
mainly
que
because I
existem
think that there are many
objetos
people that would like to
capturados
defend you.
pelos Estados Unidos
So
que
it
estão
does
ali
bring a
guardados em
certain
algum
amount of
lugar.
credibility to your testimony.
I'm
Mas ele
required
falou que ele
not
não
to do that
pode falar
because
onde que está, que ele não
officer
sabe aonde que
due
está
diligence.
e que tem coisa que ele não vai
We don't
falar
want you to go to jail.
publicamente aqui.
My
Ele vai
next
falar
question
num
would actually
close
be for
section.
Mr.
E essa
Graves.
close section
Can you please
provavelmente nós nunca
explain
vamos ter
in detail the
acesso,
event that
tá?
occurred at Van-
Eles estão aí falando muito dos relatos de pilotos,
Certainly.
tanto pilotos militares quanto os
In
pilotos
the 2000
comerciais,
timeframe,
e
the
os
main
congressistas estão ali
collection of contractors
perguntando
were
essas
operating
coisas
near
aí para essas
facilities at
pessoas que
Benton
são
Air Force
as
Base,
pessoas
which
que
served a very
trouxeram ao
large
público
100
tudo
yard
isso sobre
sided,
UAPs.
regu-
Esse é o básico,
square,
tá?
approach
Esse é o
way
básico
from
aí
the
de
ocean
hoje,
and
tá
hover
bom?
at low altitude over one of the launch facilities. Object remained for
Minha
about 10
internet
seconds
aqui
or
tá ruim pra caramba
so,
aqui em
off
casa,
the
cara,
mountain.
tá?
There was a
Alguém pode
similar
sair preso aí se
24
mentir?
hours
Não,
later
porque
this year,
não vai ter nem como
2021,
saber, né, cara, se o cara tá mentindo ou não, né?
8:45 in the morning.
Esses camaradas são tudo atores. A CIA tem andares de papelar. Bom que você conhece a CIA, hein, Filipão? Legal, hein, cara? Cara, vocês aí... Tem uma galera que fala da CIA, do FBI, da NASA, que eu acho que as pessoas sabem mais do que as próprias pessoas que trabalham lá, cara. É impressionante. Eu acho que você nunca viu um prédio, Felipe, se não me engano, muito provavelmente você nunca viu um prédio da CIA na sua frente para estar falando essas coisas, né? Mas tudo bem.
Have you seen that before on any other equipment and or during your flight time?
I have not seen what they've described. This object was estimated to be almost the size of a football field.
É, só tem especialista em CIA, FBI e NASA. Nem
Okay,
esses
and then,
caras que
my
trabalharam lá
question
dentro, eles
follow-
podem falar, né?
watching the gimbal video go
Ai,
past the incident,
ai.
can you just clarify, because to our understanding, the footage was actually cut off at a certain point, but what happens at the end of that video, just for those Americans specifically there that are wanting to know about the rest of that footage?
Certainly, there was some uncertainty or instability with the object. It seemed to rock a bit. And that's the last.
Aí estão fazendo várias perguntas sobre os objetos. Uma das coisas que já falaram, lá naquele evento do Tic-Tac, lembra do Tic-Tac qual que é, né? Aquele pequenininho lá que ele fica, sai um objeto da água. Perguntaram se era o mesmo objeto. O cara ali falou que não, que eram dois objetos, um que saiu da água e outro que estava no ar.
Are they receiving cease and desist letters from corporations for coming forward with information in regards to safety for potential airline passengers?
I have been made privy to conversations with commercial aviators who have received cease and desist orders.
So the American public should know that corporations are putting their own reputations on the basic, not the line, but ahead of the safety of the American people. And I think, would you agree with that statement?
It appears so.
Okay. And I guess this would be my last, oh, I'm out of time. I yield. I'll be back.
Good. Mr. Moskowitz.
Vamos lá.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, let's talk about the laws of physics.
Leis da
for a
física,
second.
vamos lá.
Mr. Graves and Commander Favor, I heard you talk about speed. When those objects broke the sound barrier,
Falando que
did they
esses
make a sonic boom?
objetos quebraram a barreira do som, criaram o sonic
It's
boom.
legit. You can't hear anything. It's kind of loud in there.
Yeah, you're not able to
Eu
actually.
estava preso,
tell
cara,
within
não
the
podia
vehicle.
ouvir.
I will say the objects that we were seeing, they were spherical, and they were observed up to Mach 2, which is a very non-aerodynamic shape.
What about G-forces? Let's talk about G-forces of those vehicles. Could a human survive
Qual a
those
força
G-forces
G
with
nesses
known
veículos?
technology today?
Poderia algum humano sobreviver?
For the acceleration rates that we observed.
Okay. What about what they look like? How close did you get? Did you see a seam or a rivet?
O quão
or
perto
a
que vocês
section?
estavam
And what I
desses
mean is,
objetos?
obviously, the jets you're flying have all those things.
Vocês viram eles? Vocês estavam perto? Vocês puderam reconhecer alguma coisa?
I didn't have the detail to be able to tell that.
Ele não tem
So we got
detalhe
1.5
para falar
mile
nada.
Tic-tac, which people say that's pretty far, but in airplanes, that's actually relatively close. No, it was perfectly white, smooth.
Nenhum
no
deles
windows, although when we
viu
did
nada.
take
Esse aqui é o negócio, tá?
FLIR video that
Depois vou dar minhas
put
opiniões
it on a
sobre
big
isso, tá?
screen. It actually had two little objects that came out of the bottom of it. But other than that, no windows, no seams, no nothing.
Não, ninguém viu
Mr.
nada,
Grush,
nenhum
as a
sinal
result of
nele.
your previous government work, have you met with people with direct knowledge or have direct knowledge yourself of non-human origin craft?
Yes, I personally interviewed those individuals.
Mr. Grush, as a result of your previous government work, have you met with people with direct knowledge or have
Tá.
direct knowledge
O
yourself
Gersh ali
about
falou que ele
ATs,
encontrou
advanced
diretamente com pessoas que
technologies
tiveram
that the US
contato com as
government
naves.
has?
Based on conventional advanced tech, I was briefed to the preponderance of the Defense Department's both space and aerospace compartmented programs, yeah.
Do you have knowledge or do you have reason to believe that there are programs in the advanced tech space that are unsanctioned?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you say that they're above congressional oversight, what do you mean?
Complicated question. So there's, some, I
O
would
que
call
ele
it
fala
abuse
sobre
here.
essas
So
sessões aí do
congressional
Congresso,
oversight
né?
of Conventional special access programs, so I'll use Title 10, so DOD as an example, right? So 10 U.S. Code Section 119.
Falando aí,
discusses
DOD, para quem não
congressional
sabe, é o
oversight.
Departamento de Defesa dos Estados
Discusses,
Unidos.
The DepSecDef's ability to waive congressional reporting. However, the Gang of Eight is at least supposed to be notified if a, waived or wave bigoted, unacknowledged SAP is created, and that's public law.
Well, so that how does, I mean, I don't want to cut you off, but
Yeah.
how does a program like that get funded?
I will give you generalities. I can get very specific in a closed session, but
Tá vendo só?
misappropriation of funds.
Isso aqui, isso aqui que o
Does
cara
that mean
acabou de
that-
falar.
Does that
Vamos
mean
lá.
that there is money in the budget that is
Ó,
set to go to a program, but it doesn't?
Tem,
it goes to
tem,
something else?
tá, tem
Yes, that's
legenda aí, né?
knowledge.
Vocês estão vendo a
So you're
legenda
saying
aí.
US
Tem o seguinte, ó.
corporations are
Vocês viram que o cara
overcharging
acabou de falar
for
agora? Ele
certain
falou o
techs they're
seguinte,
selling
ó.
to the US government, and additional
Eu vou
money is
falar
going
só
to
de
program?
generalidades aqui.
Correct, through something called
Os
IRAD.
detalhes eu vou fazer numa close section. Ou seja,
Satellite imagery. Let's talk about satellite
vai
imagery.
ter,
We
tem
have
essa sessão
satellites all
pública
over
para a
the
gente
place,
ver,
some that
mas
we're
depois
aware
vai
of
ter
and
um
many that
negocinho
we're not
ali
aware of.
particular entre eles, que nós não vamos ficar
of
sabendo o que
everything
vai
at every point
acontecer,
and
tá?
second. Mr. Grush, are you aware, do you have direct knowledge, or have you talked to people with direct knowledge that there are satellite imagery of these events?
Vamos ver,
That was
imagem de
one of my primary
satélite.
tasks at NGA, since we process, exploit, and disseminate that kind of information. I've seen multiple cases, some of which, to my understanding, and of course, I left NGA in April, so that's my information cutoff date. But I personally reviewed both what we call overhead collection and from other strategic and tactical platforms, that I could not even explain prosaically. And I have a degree in physics, by the way, as well. And
Ele falou que ele não viu nenhuma imagem de satélite, né? Isso aí é uma coisa importante, porque existem satélites dos Estados Unidos, do NRO, que ficam vigiando ali, né?
With direct knowledge that this imagery applies to crash sites, crash imagery.
I can't discuss that in an open session.
Ih, caralho. Galera, ó, meio que esquece isso aí, né? O cara perguntou para ele, você tem o local? Porque se eles têm naves capturadas, essas naves devem ter caído em algum lugar. O cara perguntou para ele, você sabe aonde que essas naves caíram? Não vou falar. Aí, ó.
I'll yield the balance of my time back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Eles, cara, é aquela coisa, né? Essa é a sessão do isso aí, Rio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank our witnesses for being here today. Mr. Garouche, in your
Mr.
sworn
Garouche.
testimony, you state that the United States government
Na sua testemunha,
has
você disse que o governo
retrieved
norte-americano tem naves alienígenas
spacecraft and
capturadas
other UAP-related artifacts.
e outros
You go so
artefatos.
far as to state that the U.S. is in possession of, quote, non-human spacecraft. End
São
quote.
naves não
And that
humanas.
some of these artifacts have circulated with defense contractors. Several other former military and
Outros
intelligence officials have
antigos
come forward
militares
with similar allegations.
têm
albeit in
alegações
non-public
similares
However, Dr.
ditas de
Sean
forma não pública.
Kirkpatrick, the director of AARO, previously testified before Congress that there has been, and I quote, no credible evidence thus far
Não,
of
ó,
extraterrestrial
não
activity
existem evidências
or of,
como que é? Credibles, né?
off-world technology
Sobre.
brought to
E
the
aí?
attention of the office. To your knowledge, is that statement correct?
Eita lá, vamos
It's
lá.
not accurate. I believe Dr. Kirkpatrick mentioned he had about 30 individuals that have come to Arrow thus far. A few of those individuals have also come to Arrow that I also interviewed,
Okay.
and I know what they provided Dr. Kirkpatrick and their team.
Okay,
I was able to evaluate.
okay,
That
I
information?
need to go on,
Sure.
but
É, não é fácil, não.
my understanding that his statement is accurate.
Falando que o que ele falou é
from a direct
preciso,
quote.
tá?
And this contradiction is a perfect example of why we need to inject
Aí, ó.
transparency into our government. And for another example, look no further than the pitiful response to the Chinese spy
Falando
balloon
do negócio do
debacle
balão de
earlier this
novo.
year. You may remember the mass confusion that ensued when the balloon was
Vamos
first
lá.
spotted over Montana. 4
Para
days
quem não
after
entendeu é o seguinte, essa congressista aí falou assim para ele, você, Grush, disse que você sabe que os Estados Unidos capturou naves que não são humanas. Só que nós aqui do Congresso conversamos com um oficial antes e ele nos garantiu que não existe nada disso. Como que você responde essa contradição? Ele deu uma escorregada ali, entendeu? Aí ela tá falando que tudo isso, que ela perguntou, né, se o que o cara falou antes é ou não é preciso, né? Ela falou, não, ela disse que é preciso o que ele falou. E ela tá perguntando isso justamente para a gente colocar isso, toda essa transparência em todo esse papo aí.
That is of critical value to the American people. We owe it to the citizens of this nation to make sure that our government is transparent and accountable. We must make sure that our government provides answers, and Congress must do its duty to solicit those answers. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Yeah, Mr. Frost.
Foi bravo. Vamos lá.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2022, NASA announced that it was commissioning an independent study
Vai falar da
team
NASA
to
que em
examine
2022
UAPs.
anunciou
The
um
NASA team is
comitê
comprised of
independente
scientists
que ia
across
trabalhar
different fields,
com
as well as former
os
astronauts and
UAPs, né?
pilots. In May, the independent study team held that its first
Em maio a
public
gente
meeting,
viu
which included the
aquela
perspectives from
sessão
NASA
deles,
senior
né?
leaders,
Ela
as
tá
well as
brava,
perspectives
brava
from
mesmo.
the Department of Defense and intelligence agencies. The NASA study team is also expected to release its first report pretty soon, and I think it's safe to
Essa
say
equipe
that
da
we all
NASA
eagerly
pretende,
await
em
its
breve,
results.
divulgar o seu primeiro
Mr. Graves,
relatório.
how might NASA's research
O Graves está
influence the
perguntando
commercial
como pode
industry
a
regarding
NASA, né,
safety and UAP?
influenciar a
I think NASA
indústria,
has
né,
a big role to play
sobre
as
o
far as
APs.
commercial aviation safety, and it's one of their original charges
A
as
NASA tem um
an
papel
organization.
muito
One of the
importante na
recommendations that
aviação,
have
na
been put
segurança de
forward is to
aviação
utilize their
e
existing
tudo
aviation
mais, né?
safety
Então, as
reporting
recomendações
system
delas
to
podem
serve as a
ter
short-term fill
podem ser
and trusted
utilizadas, né?
platform
Pode ter um
for
efeito
pilots
muito
that want
grande
to
na
report
aviação
on
comercial,
UAP. It also has
principalmente nesse
built-in
sistema de
analytics
relatos
capability
de
and is funded by
avistamentos,
Congress.
tá?
Gotcha. And also, Mr. Graves, are there any other industries that may be influenced by the
Alguma
NASA
outra
research on UAPs?
indústria pode
And
ficar
if
ser
so,
influenciada
how
pela
so?
pesquisa da
Well, I
NASA?
think there is a large swath of commercial capabilities that could be brought to bear on this topic, from space-based or ground-based
Falando aí dos sensores, né, tanto espaciais como sensores, terrestres que são produzidos pela indústria, que podem sim ser influenciados pelo trabalho que a NASA está fazendo. Muito bem, galera, é isso aí, está acontecendo. Então, para quem está chegando agora, a sessão no Congresso norte-americano sobre os UAPs com o Grush, que é o cara famoso aí da atualidade, e outras figuras aí. Quero falar para vocês que essa live aqui hoje é um oferecimento da Insider Store. Tô com a minha Insider aqui, ó. Então, ó, passa lá na Insider agora, ó, e você vai ter um cupomzinho de desconto do Space Today, ó. Vai lá agora na Insider Store. Será que esses caras aí estão suando frio ali, sendo entrevistados pelo Congresso? Seria legal que eles tivessem uma Insider por baixo, né? Que aí eles não iam ter problema nenhum. Então vai lá agora, ó, na Insider, grande Insider, parceirona nossa aqui com a gente, ó. Corram lá agora no site da Insider para você ter aí esse belíssimo cupom de desconto. Você usa o cupom SPACE para ter 12% de desconto no site da Insider, tá bom? Tecnologia de outro mundo, isso aí.
Mr. Freyer, do you believe that military pilots feeling empowered to share their UAP experiences has directly impacted the scientific community's research goals on this topic?
Tem um grande problema, viu, pessoal, no relato dessas coisas todas, tá? Tem um grande problema no relato. É isso que eles estão falando aí. Deixa eu ver como que está a repercussão aqui pelo Twitter da vida, que agora não chama mais Twitter, né?
Yeah, I mean, it's important. I couldn't imagine, I'm not a pilot, but I used to fly gliders in Civil Air Patrol. Huh? Yeah,
Pilot?
I mean, and so either way, I mean, I couldn't imagine, being in the glider and seeing something, and then not feeling like I had the agency to talk about it. Mr. Graves, can you discuss the importance of seeking scientists to sit on your advisory board?
A importância aí de buscar cientistas, né? Aí, ó. Será que é importante ter cientistas nesse board aí? Os caras estão perguntando.
To help them stand up a UAP integration committee to help integrate their engineering prowess into this problem. And so, yes, very much, I think this is an engineering and scientific problem as much as a national security problem.
And how might Congress help to facilitate partnerships between the scientific community and the UAP focus groups within government?
Well, I think one of the things they can do is to have these types of hearings to communicate to the public that this is a topic of interest. I think that there is a pseudo market, if you will, of interested capabilities and talent that want to approach this topic. And we're seeing that start to grow now. So I think continued conversation, reduction of stigma is going to allow that to flourish and allow answers to help generate themselves.
A briga deles é em reduzir o estigma, tá, galera?
It's important that we keep our top scientific minds focused on this issue and look for ways to increase collaboration. Thank you so much. I yield back.
Tá, e o lance é sempre ter mais colaboração.
Chairman, let me say I want to thank you for having this hearing, and I want to thank Mr. Burchett, Ms. Luna for leading this hearing. And with that, I yield my 5 minutes to Mr. Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to direct this, I believe, to Mr. Grush, but if any of you all feel like you need to jump in, just jump right in. We're good. Has the U.S. government become aware of actual evidence of extraterrestrial, otherwise unexplained forms of intelligence? And if so, when do you think this first occurred?
I like to use the term non-human. I don't like to
Chamar
use the word
metaforando,
origin.
seria uma
It's the
boa, né?
aperture open, both scientifically.
Seria
Certainly,
uma
like
boa.
I've discussed publicly previously in 1930s.
Okay. Can you give me the names and titles of the people with direct firsthand knowledge and access to some of this crash?
Você acha que você pode me dar o nome das pessoas aí que diretamente tiveram acesso a esse material aí, ou seja, as naves que caíram?
You know, and there's nothing there anymore anyway. It's just, you know, and we move like a glacier. And as soon as we announce it, I'm sure the moving vans would pull up, but please.
I can't discuss that publicly, but I did provide that
Eu não
information
posso
both to the
discutir isso
Intel Committees and the
publicamente, né?
Inspector
Falar o
General.
nome das
And we
pessoas
could get that in
publicamente, mas
skip
eu
if we were allowed to
falarei
do
numa
skip,
sessão
which is
privada,
exactly
com
probably
certeza.
What you would think.
Sure, if you had the appropriate
Yeah.
accesses, yeah.
What special access programs cover this information, and how is it possible that they have evaded oversight for so long?
I do know the names. Once again, I can't discuss that publicly and,
Tá aí.
and how they've
Não
evaded
posso dar
oversight.
nome, eu não
I-
posso falar
in
nada.
closed setting, I can tell you the specific tradecraft used.
All right.
E nada de novo, é isso
When-
mesmo,
when
cara.
do you think
É
those
isso mesmo.
programs began?
Eles estão usando o
Who
termo
authorized
spacecraft, isso aí, naves.
I do know a lot of that information, but that's something I can't discuss publicly because it's sensitive.
All right.
Cara, esse cara aí, ele
You
não
don't
pode
wanna
falar
jump in
nada
on me.
publicamente, cara. É um saco isso também. Porque aí fica na
What level
mesma,
of
né?
security clearance is required to fully access these programs?
Well, anybody who has,
And I say that because myself, Representative Gates and Representative Luna were basically turned away at one point at Eglin. So please go right ahead.
certainly difference between member access and say somebody like me, but anybody who has a, TSCI clearance and meets the eligibility criteria, the access adjudicative authority should be able to grant
Perguntou
you
quem
access.
que poderia, né,
Mr.
ter
Bishop, if you'll yield,
acesso
so
a
just to
tudo
put a
isso, né?
fine point on that, there's nothing that you're aware of that's above special access program classification.
It's a misnomer that there's anything actually above top secret. Executive Order 13526 delineates the classification levels.
Right. But I draw a point on that because we can have access to those programs. And so the notion that we're not being given that access sort of defies our typical muscle memory here in Congress. Thank you, Mr. Burchett. I'll yield back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. Along those lines, Title 10, you may not know this or not, but Title 10 and Title 50 authorization, they seem to say they're inefficient. So who gets to decide this, in your opinion, in the past?
Aí é o lance de
It's a
ter
group of
acesso.
career senior executive officials.
Okay, are they government officials?
Both
Or-
in-
O lance é, né? Alguém tem
Both
acesso a
in-house
essa informação. O cara quer
government,
saber
that's
quem é.
about as far as I
I got
can
Ele
you.
não pode
Alright,
falar, o
that's-
cara tá dando uma
that leads to my next
pressionada pelos
question.
lados ali.
Which private corporations are directly involved in this program? How much taxpayer money has been invested in these?
Quais as
Your
companhias privadas estariam envolvidas
We
nesse
know,
programa?
we audit the Pentagon every year, and I've been here 5 years, and they failed the dadgum thing every year. They lose over $1 billion a year, we think, and I was told Department of Defense, maybe 60% of their assets are unaccounted for, whatever the heck that means. In the public sector, you go to
Cara, eu
jail
acho
for
que
that.
o Wagner fez aí, perguntou o que pessoas de alto
Yeah, I
escalão
know
como
when
Grush teriam.
I'm $1 off of my DTS travel voucher, I get hammered, but seems like it doesn't work the other
If
way,
you
right?
sell over
Yeah.
if you sell over $600 worth of stuff on eBay, now you get a call from the IRS. So please, what corporations?
Yeah, I don't know the specific metrics towards the end of your question. The specific corporations I did provide to the committees in specific divisions, and I spent 11 and a half hours with both Intel committees. So.
Okay, has there been any
Ele não
Has
fala.
there been an active U.S. government disinformation campaign to deny the existence of unidentified aerial
Perguntando se
phenomena?
ele acha que existe uma
And if so,
campanha de
why?
desinformação do governo
Can't go
americano
beyond what
sobre
I've already espoused
os
publicly about
OAPs.
that.
Tá complicada a vida desse cara, viu? O negócio é o seguinte, né, cara? Ele falou, agora ele vai ter que provar, entendeu?
Okay, I've been told what that is and how to get it in the record.
Which
What have you stated publicly in your interviews for the congressional record?
if you reference my News Nation interview and I talk about a multi-decade, campaign to disenfranchise public interest,
Sorry, Mr.
basically.
Chairman, I've gone.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
apologize, Mr. Chairman. I yield back negative 21 seconds.
Thank you. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for coming here today. I do
Ninguém vai
concur
sair
with the
preso
ranking
daí
member,
não,
as well
cara.
as several other members here on this committee, that this is a committee for whistleblowers and for the protection of whistleblowers as well. So we understand what you're putting on the table here and what you're putting on the line here. and we
Falando
thank
que
you
ela
for that.
entende que eles não
Mr. Grush, you
podem
sat
falar
on the
várias coisas, né?
Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon Task Force created in the 2020 NDAA, correct?
Yes.
There have been some things that that have been mentioned here during this hearing that I wanted to pick up on. Mr. Graves, you mentioned specifically during the answers to one of your questions, you named Boeing contractors being engaged in an incident regarding this red cube.
Falando
on football-
contra o pessoal da Boeing, né?
football field
Tava
wide. I was
diretamente
wondering if you
envolvido
could
nisso
speak
aí,
a
né?
little bit about the interaction, or Mr. Grush, either of you, the interactions between
Pedindo para
defense
falar pouco sobre a
contractor companies
interação
and any
entre
UAP-related
essas
programs or
empresas aí.
So I'll just say that the information about the contractor himself were provided by a witness, and I have no particular detail in
Understood.
that relationship.
Não
Mr.
tem,
Grush?
ele não sabe de nenhuma relação.
Kind of general unclass wave tops. Certainly the contractors, are the metal benders, so to speak. They're the ones actually doing specific performance on government contracts.
Are they required to issue any disclosure regarding UAP sightings, or do they engage in any reporting around this?
In terms of the contractors,
Yes.
not that I'm aware of.
They do not. Okay.
Ele não teve acesso a nenhum contrato nem
When it
nada.
comes to notification that you had mentioned about IRAD programs, we have seen defense contractors abuse their contracts before through this committee. I have seen it personally, and I have also seen the notification requirements to Congress abused. I am wondering, one of the loopholes that we see in the law is that there is, at least from my vantage point, is that depending on what we're seeing, is that there are no actual definitions or requirements for notification. Are there, what methods of notification did you
Os
observe?
métodos de
when they say they
notificação
notified
das
Congress,
empresas
how
contratadas.
did they do that?
A grande
Do you have
questão é,
insight into
será
that?
que tem alguma empresa
certain IRAD
envolvida
activities,
nisso?
that
Empresa
the,
particular
I can only think of
envolvida
ones
nisso?
conventional in nature.
Não.
Sometimes they flow through
Fica naquela, né?
certain, how to say, SAP programs that have cognizant
A gente não
authority
vai
over
saber nunca, porque esse
the
cara
Air
não vai
Force or
falar,
something,
tá?
and those are congressionally reported compartments, but IRAD is literally internal to the contractor. So as long as it's money, either profits, private investment, et cetera,
And
they can do whatever they
to
want.
put a
yeah.
finer point on it, when there is a requirement for any agency or company to notify, or any agency to notify Congress,
Existe algum
do they contact
documento,
the chairman
né,
of a committee?
para a
Do
empresa
they
que ela
get them on the
precisa
phone
notificar o
specifically?
Congresso
Is this through an
sobre
email to
essas coisas aí?
hypothetically a dead email box?
A lot of it comes through what they call the PPR.
Que aí eles vão
periodic
atrás,
program
né?
review
Se tiver, eles vão
process.
atrás.
If it's a, a SAP or controlled access program equity, and then those go to the specific committees, whether it be the SAS,
Okay.
CASC, HISI.
Thank you. I apologize. I just, my time is limited. Mr. Graves, one of your main concerns that the FAA currently does not have an official process to receive reports of UAP from pilots or
Tá, e
others.
falando que
correct?
a FAA não
Correct.
tem um
And,
sistema de
in your
relatos, né?
experience, what data should the Aero program prioritize for potential collection?
Na opinião
We have,
dele, qual que
location,
seriam
date,
os
time, but are there
dados, né, que
other
deviam ser
specific
priorizados na hora de fazer um relato,
characteristics that
tá?
should be included in these reports?
Localização,
Certainly,
data,
I think
etc.
that there's two categories that would be important. One would be kinematics and understanding the specifics of how the vehicle or objects are moving.
Ele falando que tinha que
And
ser
the second would
dividido,
be a
né?
more
Deles
zoomed
tinha
out
que ser a
approach of
parte
being able to,
cinemática, né?
look at origin
Sobre
and
como o
destination,
veículo se
after,
move e
before
tal. E a
incident, as well
segunda
as getting a better
é
contextual understanding of how
sobre
these,
a origem, o
these objects are
destino e tudo
interacting with
mais,
each other.
tá?
Thank you. Now, because I only have a minute left, I apologize, we only have 5 minutes today, but for the record, if you were me, where would you look? Titles, programs, departments, regions, if you could just name anything. And I put that as an open question to the three of you.
I'd be happy to give you that in a closed environment. I can tell you specifically.
Ai.
Thank you.
Tá, eles não vão falar nada
Commander
publicamente, tá, galera?
And I would
Não
say,
vão falar
typically,
nada
You have to know where to look. They're not going to
publicamente.
divulge it to you because of the classification levels. But if you know where to look and who to talk to, which is exactly what Mr. Grush can point you, then you have them.
Okay. Mr. Graves?
I was an operator, so I was depending on folks like Mr. Grosh to do that homework.
Okay. Thank you very much. I yield back to the chair.
Mr. Biggs?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I thank the witnesses for being here today. I'm over here.
Thank you so much for being here. I want to get into specifics here, and a reason I'm going to go this way is because you've talked a bit about what I would call misdirection by official U.S. government.
Falando aí direcionamento errado do governo americano sobre os UAPs, tá?
Last week, White House NSC spokesman John Kirby.
Cara, eu também tô achando que é um
stated that UAPs
teatro,
are
né?
having an
É
impact
tudo
on our
isso é para
training
nada,
ranges
tá?
and need to be treated as a legitimate
O cara não
issue.
pode
You
falar,
concur
galera.
with the
Ele tem,
statements? That's for each
as
of you.
coisas mais importantes ele não pode falar publicamente. Então por que fizeram isso, né?
Yes.
Okay. Now, having said that, I'm going to take you to specific instances around the Phoenix Valley, because that's where I live. In 97, we had the famous
Phoenix Lights.
case. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. There were two things that went along with that, and the explanation was military training range off Luke and the Barry Goldwater Range. Do you know anything different other than the official explanation of those lights?
Ó, ele tá
Well, what's in
voltando.
the public vernacular about it? That was outside the scope of my
Não sabe.
duties.
Ele está
And if
voltando
we
para.
wanted to
Deixa
just- my
eu
question
contextualizar
was
aqui para a
calling from
galera que não é da área de ufologia, não vai entender. Em 1997, na cidade de Phoenix, nos Estados Unidos, aconteceu um fenômeno que é muito famoso, um evento muito relatado, as chamadas luzes de Phoenix, tá? Esse congressista aí está falando isso e a explicação na época foi que era um treinamento militar. Ele perguntou para o cara ali se ele tem algum outro conhecimento sobre as luzes de Phoenix.
So if
Tá? Não tem.
it's true that UAPs are having an impact on training ranges, and this administration considers it to be a legitimate issue, what steps can Congress take to address training range impacts? And I say that
Quais os
having two
impactos, né, que os
very
UAPs
large
podem
training
ter
ranges in my state.
no
And so we'll start with Mr. Graves and go
relacionado com o
down the
treinamento,
panel.
né? Tanto da
Some of
Força
the
Aérea
initial
como da
procedures
Marinha
have been
Americana.
implemented, such as within the United States Navy that have a range follower report that gathers information from pilots. I understand that a service-wide reporting mechanism is still pending. However, that would be a great next step, not only for gathering information, but for showing the troops that it is an acceptable topic and reducing the stigma.
Okay, please, all of you continue.
Yeah, as a recipient of a lot of those training range reports, sometimes we only get contextual kind of oral.
Tá aí, ó,
reporting.
falando
It'd be
que
nice if they attach all
o
sensor
pessoal
data
do
and
treinamento
there's a
ali tem que
system
ser
in
a
place that
galera
can handle
que...
multiple classifications of data, and that's an issue with the
Mas
F-35,
então,
right? That jet was
Omicron,
never
já
built
vou
to be an
falar
ISR
sobre isso, tá,
platform,
cara? Já
and
já
it's
vou falar sobre
pain in
isso.
the, we'll just say butts,
Falando que os
to get
pilotos
the
ali,
data
eles vão
off,
ter que
so.
ter uma maneira de relatar tudo isso como acontece.
Yeah, I would agree with the previous two, being a user of those training ranges, that the data has to be out there. You have to acknowledge that you're seeing them, and then you have to collect the data. Right now, you get the report, someone says, I saw something, but no one collects the radar data to back it up and do research.
Okay. Do you believe that the 2019 classification guidelines for UAPs interferes with the federal government's ability to be transparent with the American people? And do you think we need to be more transparent with the American people? All of you, yeah.
I'll say yes to that.
Yeah, I'm familiar with at least the UAP Task Force 2019 Security Classification Guide. I think it's fair. I did actually help author that with the.
Uh-oh,
director at
you
the
got a
time.
bias that
Yeah,
way then.
but I will say, I'll call it a lazy attitude about declassifying videos. I mean, I've seen some of the videos of the recent shoot down, and I saw no reason that couldn't have been released as long as they mask, some data. The American people deserve to see that imagery in full motion video.
Ele quer trazer à tona aí os... Eu sou ufólogo, não
I
sou
would
não,
think,
cara.
well,
Tá?
in my opinion, I will say, things are overclassified. I know for a fact the video or the pictures that came out in the 2020 report that had the stuff off the East Coast, they were taken with an iPhone off the East Coast. A buddy of mine was one of the senior people there, and he said they were originally classified at TSSCI. And my question to him was, what's TSSCI about these? They're an iPhone
Right.
literally off the vacapes. That's not TSSCI. So they're overclassified, and as soon as they do that, they go in a vault, and then you all have to look for them.
Yeah, so with the overclassification, that may be one way. Are there other ways that the DoD or intelligence agencies are keeping this
Tem
information
muita
from the American people
discussão,
or even from
tem
Congress?
muita discussão técnica aí, galera.
I think part of that has been not encouraging reporting. If the problem
Deixa eu fazer um outro adendo aqui para vocês. Tem toda uma discussão técnica que vocês estão vendo aí sobre aquilo que eu já falo também, né? Quais as agências que podem interferir no quê? Tá? Quais as agências que podem interferir no quê? Então, tem o Departamento de Defesa, tem a CIA, tem a FBI, tem a Navy, tem a Força Aérea Americana, e como que isso pode, e qual que pode classificar ou não, né? Se aquele documento ele pode ser ou não pode ser classificado ali como secreto, ultra secreto, por que que uma agência coloca, modifica ali, né? Coloca ali umas marcas no negócio para não ver uns dados, a outra. Então tem toda uma discussão técnica ao longo disso. Qual que seria a agência responsável por isso, por aquilo, por classificar ou não tais documentos, por liberar ou não tais documentos? Tem toda uma grande parte disso aí, que é uma discussão técnica deles lá, que a gente não sabe nem o que falar, que é uma boa parte disso aí que eles ficam conversando. Tem também, tá? Tem uma outra grande parte que é essa parte dos relatos. Isso aí é importante pra caramba. Tem a parte dos sensores e tem a parte do cara aí do Grush que falou que tem naves, tá bom? Então só para dar aquela contextualizada aí para vocês.
And/or beings that has caused harm to humans.
I can't get into the specifics in an open environment, but at least the activity that I personally witnessed, and I have to be very careful here because they tell you never to acknowledge tradecraft, right? So what I personally witnessed myself and my wife was very disturbing.
Okay. One of my constituents actually sent this next question, and I figured I'd ask it since I had the same thought. You've said that the U.S. has intact spacecraft. You said that the government has alien bodies or alien species.
Ixi, e agora?
Have you seen?
Você viu alguma espécie alienígena?
I have to be careful to describe what I've seen.
Eu tenho que ter muito cuidado ao descrever o que eu vi.
Behind closed doors.
And have you seen
Não
any of the
nesse, não
bodies?
vai ser publicamente que eu vou falar
That's
disso.
something I've not witnessed myself.
Okay.
Não, ele
And
não
with
viu.
that being said,
Ele
you know,
não viu,
the other,
tá?
other statement that has been made that was intriguing to
Ele
me
não
because,
viu.
and it's intriguing because my view has been that we are billions of light years away from any other system.
Aí.
And
Também não é
the
billions também, né,
concept
cara?
that
Mas
an
tá tudo bem.
alien species that's
Entendi o que você quis dizer.
technologically advanced enough to travel billions of light years gets here and somehow is incompetent enough to not survive Earth or crashes is
Isso aí,
something
esse
I
cara
find a little bit
toca aqui, cara. É isso mesmo, eu acho a mesma coisa.
With that being said, you have mentioned that there's interdimensional potential. Could you expound on that?
Yeah, to answer your first question, and I'm here as a fact witness and expert, but I will give you a theoretical framework, at least to work off, to kind of espouse crashes, regardless of your level of sentience, right? Planes crash, cars crash, n number of sorties, however high, a small percentage are going to end in mission failure, if you will, as we say in the Air Force. And then in terms of multidimensionality, that kind of thing, the framework that I'm familiar with, for example, is something called the holographic principle. It derives itself from general relativity and quantum mechanics, and that is, if you want to imagine a 3D object such as yourself casting a shadow onto a 2D surface, that's the holographic principle. So you can be projected, quasi-projected from higher dimensional space to lower dimensional. It's a scientific trope that you can actually cross, literally, as far as I understand, but there's probably guys with PhDs that we could probably argue about that.
But you have not seen any documentation that that's what's occurring.
Only a
theory.
theoretical framework discussion. Yes.
Okay.
Falando aí.
Okay. Occam's razor is that these aircraft, have they been identified that they are being produced by domestic, military and contractors?
Falando se essas naves poderiam ser construídas militarmente.
Not to my knowledge, plus the recoveries predate a lot of our advanced programs that I previously am witting of. So,
would it be safe to say that there could be a scenario today where you have an aircraft that crashes and because it's been involved in one program from one federal agency, and but the agency that retrieves it does
is not aware of that program, and to them, it appears alien in origin?
I mean, that's a hypothetical situation. I'm not aware of any historical situation that would match that you described. So
You're not aware, it has not happened that you're aware of?
that I'm aware of.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Ó, esse cara aí foi o mais interessante até agora, hein? Vamos lá. Ele perguntou, tentar traduzir rapidamente aqui para vocês. Ele perguntou para o cara o seguinte: primeiro, se você já viu as naves. Ele falou que ele não viu. Ele não viu. Depois o cara falou o seguinte: olha só, né? Uma nave viajar o universo tal e bater aqui na Terra, né? Isso aí não mostraria uma incompetência muito grande dele. Eu também acho, tá?
We were not afforded access to all of the flight crew. And initially, we were not afforded access to images and to radar. Thereafter, we had a bit of a discussion about how authorities flow in the United States of America, and we did see the image. And we did meet with one member of the flight crew who took the image. The image was of something that I am not able to attach to any human capability, either from the United States or from any of our adversaries. And I'm somewhat informed on the matter, having served on the Armed Services Committee for 7 years, having served on the committee that oversees DARPA and advanced technologies for several years. When we spoke with the flight crew, and when he showed us the photo that he'd taken, I asked why
Quando você falou
video
com eles,
wasn't
quando você
engaged,
mostrou,
why we didn't have a FLIR system that worked. Here's what he said. They were out on a test mission that day over the Gulf of Mexico. And when you're on a test mission, you're supposed to have clear airspace. Not supposed to be anything that shows up. And they saw a sequence of 4 craft in a clear diamond formation for which there is a radar sequence that I alone have observed in the United States Congress. One of the pilots goes to check out that diamond formation and sees a large floating, what I can only describe as an orb. Again, like I said, not of any human capability that I'm aware of. And when he approached, he said that his radar went down. He said that his FLIR system malfunctioned and that he had to manually take this image from one of the lenses, and it was not automated in collection as you would typically see in a test mission. So I guess I'll start with Commander Fravor. How should we think
são
about
todos
the fact
screws.
that this
Ontem
craft
estive no
was
Unicamp,
approached by
departamento de
our
Química,
pilot,
encontrei o ET. Ah, viu o ET lá?
had the capability of disarming a number of the sensor and collection
Será em
systems?
rede nacional? Não. Tem nada de rede nacional.
Well, I think this goes to that national security side, and you can go back through history of things showing up at certain areas and disabling our capabilities, which is disheartening. And for us, I mean, like I said, it completely disabled the radar on the aircraft when it tried to do it. And the only way we could see it is passively, which is how he got that image. So I think that's a concern on what are these doing, not only how do they
Um dia eu vou
operate,
chamar
but their
o
capabilities
Boaventura,
inside
tá?
to do things like this.
And how should we think about 4 craft moving in a very clear formation, equidistant from one another, in a diamond? In all of the phenomenon, perhaps, Mr. Grave, that you've analyzed, have we ever seen multiple craft in a single formation?
I have one particular case, and that was during the gimbal incident. The recording on the AT FLIR system shows a single object that rotates. You hear the pilots refer to a fleet of objects that is not visible on the FLIR system. And that was something that I witnessed during the debrief as part of the radar data on the situational awareness page. I would like to add, however, Congressman, there's a small bit of anger, I would say. I would feel those pilots are still facing that difficulty in reporting this topic, and they don't have the tools to be able to mitigate this issue. It's just to show how serious this is and why this is such an important issue for our pilots and for our nation.
It was stated explicitly to me by these test pilots that if you have a UAP experience, the best thing you can do for your career is forget it and not tell anyone, because any type of reporting, either above the surface or below the surface, does have a perceived consequence to these people, and that is a culture we must change if we want to get to the truth. Mr. Chairman, I would observe that perhaps as we move forward from this hearing, there are some obvious next steps. Every person watching this knows that we need to meet with Mr. Grush in a secure, compartmentalized facility so that we can get fulsome answers that do not put him in jeopardy and that give us the information we need. Second, I would
Aí, ó.
suggest that the radar images that were collected of this formation of craft out of Eglin Air Force Base, and specifically the actual image taken by the actual flight crew that we can actually validate, be provided to the committee, subpoenaed if necessary,
Aí, ó.
so that we're able to
O cara
track
falou,
how
os
to
cara
get
tá
this type of
enrolando a
report
gente, hein?
and analysis done in a more fulsome way. That would be my recommendation, humbly as a guest here of the Fine Oversight Committee. I yield back.
Ms. Mace?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to our witnesses who are testifying today. I want to thank each of you for being here to discuss a topic of grave importance to our national security. Earlier this year, a Chinese spy balloon was shot down off the coast of my home state of South Carolina. Since the Roswell incident in 1947, many Americans have wondered about the dangers of unknown objects crisscrossing our skies. Whether these are UAPs or weather phenomena, advanced technology from American allied or enemy forces, or something more out of this world. So my first question, I have several questions, and if we can just be quick on these
Primeira
first two,
pergunta
I'll
dela
ask
aí.
each of you the same question, and then I'll get to each of you individually. The first one, when you reported your experiences with a UAP, did any of you face any repercussions with your superiors, yes or no?
No.
No. I've actually never seen anything personally.
Ele não viu nada pessoalmente.
All right.
Mas isso aí
And then
também eu vou te
do
contar,
you
cara.
believe there's an
Esses
active
congressistas eles são
disinformation
muito
campaign within our
chatos.
government denying
Porque o
existence of
cara já
UAPs?
falou,
Yes or
cara, que ele não viu nada
I
pessoalmente.
don't have an answer to that.
As previously stated publicly, yes.
I think previously with like Project Blue Book, yes, but currently I don't speak for the United States government.
Okay, thank you. I have a few questions for Mr. Graves. What percentage of UAP sightings in your
Qual a
belief go
porcentagem de
unreported by our
fenômenos OAP
pilots?
não são
This is an
reportados?
approximation based off of my personal experience being with a number of pilots, but I would estimate we're somewhere near 5%.
95% dos fenômenos vistos
So like
pelos pilotos não são
95%
reportados.
basically don't. In the incident off Virginia Beach, do you believe the Navy took the danger to your aircraft seriously after it was reported?
Absolutely.
A few questions for Mr. Favor. As an expert naval aviator, have you ever seen an object that looked and moved like the Tic Tac UAP?
No.
Did the Tic Tac UAP move in such a way that defied the laws of physics?
The way we understand them, yes.
O tic-tac desafia as leis da
Many
física,
dismiss
sim.
UAP reports as classified weapons testing by our own government, but in your experience as a pilot, does our government typically test advanced weapon systems right next to multi-million-dollar jets without informing our pilots?
No, we have test ranges for that.
It took over 15 years for your encounter with the Tic Tac to
Levou
be
15
declassified. Do you
anos
feel there were good reason to prevent lawmakers from having
para
access to it?
acessar as imagens do
No, I
tic-tac
just
aí.
think it was ignored when it happened and it just sat somewhere in a file, never got reported.
In a drawer. It happens a lot up here. Shocker. Mr. Grush, a couple of questions for you too, sir, this morning. What percentage of UAPs do you feel are adequately investigated by the U.S.
Qual a
government? Of the
porcentagem de
5%
UAPs
that
você
are
estima
reported?
que o governo americano
I can only
está
speak for
desses
my
5%?
personal leadership over at NGA. I tried to look at every report that came through that I could triage. So,
Do you believe that officials at the highest levels of national security apparatus have
Você acha que
unlawfully
os
withheld
executivos estão na
information
maior,
from Congress
mais alto escalão aí para poder investigar isso?
there are certain elected leaders that had more information that I'm not sure what they've shared with certain Gang of Eight members or et cetera, but certainly I would not be surprised.
Okay. You've stated that the government is in possession of potentially non-human spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public.
Não
setting.
posso dizer. Se o governo tem contato com alguma civilização
Okay, I can't ask
alienígena.
when this occurred.
Não, o cara também não pode dizer nada.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries.
Tá aí falando que tem sim algum tipo
Were
de
they, I guess, human or non-human
seres, né?
biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be
Será que tem
determined?
algum vídeo, alguma foto?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
Ou documentação específica que eles têm, eu não sei
okay.
dizer.
So, and you may or may not be able to
Ninguém
answer my
sabe
last
dizer
question, and
nada,
maybe we
cara.
get into a skiff at the next hearing that we have, but who in the government, either what agency, sub-agency,
Quais as agências, subagências,
who should be
contratantes?
called into the next hearing about UAPs, either in
Qual teria
public
que ser a
setting or
sequência aí
even in a
para
private
os
setting? And you probably can't
para
name names, but what
os
agencies or organizations, contractors, et cetera, do we need to call
para
in
que
to
isso
get these
tudo pudesse vir à
questions
tona,
answered,
né?
whether it's about funding, what programs are happening, and what's out there?
I can give you a specific cooperative and hostile witness list of specific individuals that were in those.
And how soon can we get that list?
I'm happy to provide that to you.
Super, thank you. And I yield back.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all of the witnesses for being here today to discuss this very unique topic. And I'd like to jump right into my questions, if you don't mind. Commander Fravor, can you briefly describe your background?
Yeah, I was an enlisted Marine, Naval Academy graduate, Navy, flew for 18 years.
Tá aí falando,
got a
né, que ele
master's from
foi,
University of
tudo que ele
Houston.
fez, né? Tá dando as
I've worked in private
credenciais
sector
dele
for the
aí.
last, what now,
O
16
cara
years,
tá dando as
17 years.
credenciais
I
dele.
do a lot of defense work.
Meu tio tá lá na Itália, é fã
Really
seu. Manda um
gold-plated
abraço pra ele. José,
Commander
não,
Fravor,
não.
we have all seen the floating Tic Tac video that you engaged with on
Parabéns pelo projeto,
November
Renato. Boa,
14th,
tamo junto, cara. Vai ser legal
2004.
pra
Can you
caramba.
briefly talk about why you were off the coast of San Diego that day?
Yeah, we were at a workup with all the battle groups, so we integrate the ships with the carrier.
Ela tá
everything with the
perguntando
carrier,
quais são as credenciais desse
and we
cara aí
start
pra ele
working, so
poder
we're
ficar
doing an air
falando das
defense
coisas,
to
tá?
hone not only our skills, but those of the USS Princeton when they had been tracking them for 2 weeks. The problem was that there was never manned aircraft airborne when they were tracking them, and this was the first day, and unfortunately, we were the ones airborne and went and saw it.
Do you remember the weather that day? Was it cloudy or windy or anything out of the ordinary on the
Tá, pra
Pacific
quem não
coast?
sabe, esse cara aí, esse aí, ó, o Fravor, né? Isso aí que tá falando, ele é o cara do Tic Tac, tá?
Now, is it true that you saw, in your words, a 40-foot flying tic-tac shaped object?
That's correct, or for some people that can't.
Falando
know,
aí que ele
Tic Tac
viu
is a giant flying propane tank.
vários tic-tacs aí
Did this
voando,
object
tá?
come up on radar or interfere with your radar or the USS Princeton?
The Princeton tracked it, the Nimitz tracked it, the E2 tracked it. We never saw it on our radars. Our fire control radars never picked it up. The other airplane that took the video did get it on a radar. As soon as it tried to lock it, it jammed the radar, spit the lock, and he rapidly switched over to the targeting pod, which you can do in the F-18.
Tá aí, ó.
From what you saw that day and what you've seen on video, did you see any source of propulsion from the flying object, including on any potential
Você
thermal
viu,
scans from
você
your
viu
aircraft?
algum objeto ali que você
none.
podia
There's
ter
no,
uma
IR
ideia
plane
de
coming out,
propulsão, né?
and
E tudo
Chad, who
mais?
took the video, went through all the EO, which is black and white TV, and the IR modes, and there's no visual signs of propulsion. It's just sitting in space at 20,000 feet.
In your career, have you ever seen a propulsion system that creates no thermal exhaust?
No.
Propulsion System, desculpa.
Can you
Propulsão
describe
não,
how the
Propulsion
aircraft
System.
maneuvered?
Abruptly, very determinate. It knew exactly what it was doing. It was aware of our presence, and it had acceleration rates. I mean, it went from 0 to matching our speed in no time at all.
Now, if the fastest plane on Earth was trying to do these maneuvers that you saw, would it be capable of doing that?
No, not even close.
Gente que ele nunca viu nada parecido com
And just to
isso
confirm, this
antes.
object had no wings, correct?
No wings.
Não tinha asas.
Now, was the aircraft that you were flying, was it armed?
No, never felt threatened at all.
Perguntando se tinha armas, né? Não, falou que não foram ameaçados em momento algum.
Of the United States could have shot the Tic Tac down.
I'd say no, just on the performance. It was
Falando dos
less.
Estados Unidos, por que que eles não abateram, né, a nave Tic Tac, tá?
It looks like that we have a problem here that needs further investigation.
Yes.
In your belief, is this flying Tic Tac? I mean, is it capable of being the product of any other nation on the earth.
No, I actually said, like I said earlier, I think it defies current material science and the ability to develop that much propulsion. And I know there's been some physicists of them calculations, which is beyond anything that we have.
Well, either the United States has an adversary here in this world that we don't know, or we really have some serious investigations to do. I really appreciate you being here. Is there anything else about the November 14th, 2004 incident that you think is important for this committee to know that you haven't been asked here today?
No, you know, it's been said it's probably the most credible UFO sighting in history, based
Falando aí
on all
que
the
essa é
sensors that were tracking it,
uma das
and for us to get
melhores
visual and to go
observações
against the naysayers that
de UFOs,
something
né,
on
que a
the
gente já
screen or
teve na
whatever,
história,
there's 4 sets of human
graças aos
eyeballs, they're all very
sensores aí
credible. Of the
que
6 of us that were involved in
tiveram a
looking and shooting
chance
the video,
de
every one of us spent
registrar,
40+
né?
years in the
Ele
military
tá falando aí
in
do
very
tic-tac,
responsible
tá?
positions.
Esse cara aí, ele só
The
fala do
world needs to
tic-tac,
know
tá,
that.
galera?
It's not a joke.
No, thank you very much for your testimony here today, for all of you. Yield back.
Isso aí
Mr.
só
Chairman.
fala do tic-tac.
Mr. August.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here and the courage it took to come forward and again, the sacrifice that each of you have made. I serve on the National Security Subcommittee for the Financial Services Committee, so I really want to stay in the national security lane, if I may. So when we think about traditional adversaries and both us towards them and them towards us, you know, we probe their capabilities. We look for weaknesses, and we collect that data, that reconnaissance for in the event we need it in the future.
Que é tic-tac, já já eu
For
mostro para
each of
vocês
you,
o
yes or no
tic-tac, tá?
question, based off of your own
Daqui a
experience
pouco
or
eu
the
mostro
data
o que é
that
o
you've been
tic-tac.
privy to, is there any indication that these UAPs could be essentially collecting reconnaissance information? Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Mr. Grush?
Fair assessment, yeah.
Mr. Fravor?
Very possible.
Again, in the national security vein, is it possible that these UAPs would be probing our capabilities? Yes or no, Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Rush?
Perguntando se os UAPs podem vasculhar a nossa
Is it possible
capacidade.
that these UAPs are testing for vulnerabilities in our
Os
current
UAPs estão
system?
testando o nosso sistema, a vulnerabilidade dos nossos sistemas de defesa. Todos estão respondendo a mesma
Do
coisa.
you feel, based off of your experience and the information that you've been privy to, that these UAPs provide an existential threat to the national security of the United States?
Algum problema de segurança para os Estados Unidos?
Same answer potentially. Yeah, I'd say
Potencialmente, sim.
potentially.
Todos eles são.
Mr. Graves and Fravor, you know, in the event that your encounters have become hostile, would you have had the capability
O
to
evento
defend
que
yourself,
vocês
your crew, your
presenciaram
aircraft?
foi hostil?
Absolutely not.
Sir?
No.
Não, não foi nenhuma hostilidade.
Is based off of the information that you've been privy to, is there any indication that these UAPs are interested in our nuclear technology and capabilities?
Alguns dos UAPs tinham alguma tecnologia nuclear?
By external observation, sure, that could be a fair assessment, yeah.
Ah, o cara falou que pode, mas como que ele vai afirmar que pode?
Is there any
Ele só viu o
indication
negócio
that
de
the
longe,
Department
né,
of
cara?
Energy is involved in UAP data collection and housing?
I don't have an answer.
I can't confirm or deny that.
Eu não
in
poder
public.
falar essas coisas, né?
Could
cara? O
you
cara
do
tá
it
perguntando
in
muito
a
detalhe, é só se
secure
você
setting?
estivesse na frente da nave e olhe lá, né?
Mr. Fravor?
No, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, you know, I think I'm the last member to go, but there clearly is a threat to the national security of the United States.
Falando aí, né? Ele tá
As
falando que
members of Congress, we have a
tem aí
responsibility
uma grande
to
ameaça
maintain
à segurança
oversight and be aware of these
norte-americana.
activities so that, if appropriate, we take action. I would encourage the chairman to demand that we have any and all, but in particular, Mr. Grush, talk to us in a skiff. And if that
In a
access is
skiff.
denied, I will personally volunteer to initiate the Holman Rule against any personnel or any program or any agency that denies access to Congress. Mr. Chairman, with that, I will yield the remainder of my time to my fellow colleague from Tennessee, Mr. Burchett.
Tá aí, ó.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Ogles, for the great questions, brother. Mr. Grush, I might have asked this before, but I want to make sure. Do you have any personal knowledge of someone who's possibly been injured working on legacy UAP reverse engineering?
Yes.
Reversa engenharia, ó. Engenharia reversa.
How were they injured? Was it is it something like a radioactive type situation or something we didn't understand? I've heard people
Foi
talk
alguém se
about
feriu fazendo engenharia
Savannah
reversa.
syndrome type incidences. What was your recollection of that?
I can't get into specifics, but you could imagine assessing an unknown unknown. There's a lot of potentialities you can't fully prepare for.
How do you think we ought to handle UAP whistleblower complaints like yours in the future?
Yeah, there was some issue with mine. So, PPD 19 process, it goes to the Intel committees, either through PPD 19 or ICD 120. There's
Aí
not
começa a falar
a
essas
way for
siglas aí.
the intelligence community
Que
inspector
tipo de
general
engenharia
to
reversa?
provide
Aí o
that
cara
to
não vai falar,
other
cara. Ele não
committees.
pode falar
And
quase
I
nada,
asked
cara.
my
Você ainda quer saber que
information
tipo de engenharia
be sent
reversa?
to the House and Senate Armed Services Committee because there are Title 10 equities at play, but there was no smooth process to do so.
Lembrando sempre, pessoal, que essa live aqui é um
Are you aware of any individuals that are participating in
oferecimento
reverse engineering
da nossa
programs for
queridíssima
non-traditional craft?
Insider.
Personally,
Eu tô de Insider aqui hoje, tá?
You know any that
Para
would be
vocês,
willing to
então passem lá
testify
no
to
site,
facilitate
o link tá aí na descrição do vídeo, tá?
Certainly closed door
Passem lá agora no
assurances,
site da Insider para você
breaking
garantir
your NDA, they're not
12%
gonna
de
get,
desconto com o cupom
administratively
SPACE,
punished for
tá?
that.
SPACE, você vai ter 12% de desconto. Lembrando da Insider, né? Seria ideal para os caras estarem usando ali por baixo, né? Nesse momento de tensão, que eles ainda tá suando muito frio, né? Sendo arguídos aí. Então eles ficariam numa boa. Então vá lá
Why don't you
agora
come back to me, Mr.
no
Chairman?
site da Insider Store, tá bom?
Miss Luna, if is she on that list?
Sure.
Chairman, I'd like to submit for the record an article by News Nation, and it follows Mr. Grush's full interview for the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Grush, why is it that you refer to the phenomenon as non-human
Por que
intelligence?
você
Why
diz que o
deviate from the
fenômeno é de
basis of
inteligência não
extraterrestrial
humana?
life?
I think the phenomenon is very complex, and I like to leave an open mind analytically to
Falando que o
specific.
fenômeno ele é muito complexo, né?
When you say specific
não pode
origin,
ter-
are you referring, can you elaborate on that for those that might not?
If it's a
Você foi lá e
traditional
afirmou que é não humana, né?
extraterrestrial origin or something else that we don't quite understand from either a biological or astrophysics perspective. Yeah, I just like to keep an open mind on what it could be. Yeah.
Okay, and referring to your News Nation interview, you had referenced specific treaties between governments. Article 3 of the Nuclear Arms Treaty with Russia identifies UAPs. It specifically mentions them. To your knowledge, are there safety measures in place with foreign governments or other
Falando que
superpowers to
na
avoid an
entrevista que ele deu no News Nation,
escalatory
né, que é a
situation in the
entrevista
event
famosa
that
dele,
a
né,
UAP
do Grush,
malevolent
Grush
event
no
occurs?
News Nation.
Yeah, you're referring to actual public treaty in the UN Register. It's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, the Agreement on Measures to Reduce the Risk of Outbreak of Nuclear War signed in 1971. Unclassified treaty publicly available. And if you cite the George Washington University National Security Archives, you will find the declassified in 2013 specific provisions in the specific
Aqui, ó, vou
red
deixar
line
depois aqui
flash
a entrevista
message
para vocês.
traffic
Quem
with
quiser
specific
ler aí uma
codes
entrevista
pursuant to Article 3 and
extensa
Article
que esse cara aí,
Situation
ó,
2,
o
which is
Grush
in
deu ao News
the
Nation,
previously classified
falando
NSA
sobre
archive.
esse
What I
lance
would
dele
recommend, and I tried to get
conhecer
access, but
pessoas que tiveram
wall
acesso
of
a
silence at the White
possíveis
House,
naves alienígenas.
was those
tá?
specific incidents when those message traffic was used. I think some scholarship on that would open the door to a further investigation using those publicly available information.
Thank you. And then my last question with 51 seconds remaining. You mentioned white collar crimes potentially being taking place in regards to a cover up. Can you please elaborate?
I have concerns based on the interviews I conducted under my official duties of potential violations of the federal acquisition regulations, the FAR.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I yield the remainder of my time.
Okay, we'll go to Mr. Raskin for 3 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I thank the witnesses for their endurance and service today. Mr. Fravor, you've described your episode in detail now, and you call it the most credible UFO sighting in history.
Tá falando, né? Que ele acabou de falar que ele considera o
Was this the first time that
o
you encountered
evento
a UFO
ufológico,
or
né,
a
mais
UAP
bem registrado da
in
história
2004?
americana, né?
And what was your general attitude or perspective on the UFO discussion before that happened?
Qual a sua atitude aí
I
antes
never
disso, né?
felt that we were alone with all the planets out there, but I wasn't a UFO person. I wasn't watching History Channel and MUFON and all that.
And
Não via o
have you had experiences or encounters since that happened?
No.
And so have you formed any general conclusions about what you think you experienced then?
Yes, I think what we experienced was, like I said, well beyond the material science and the capabilities that we had at the time.
Falando aí que o que ele viu, ele tem uma certeza que é uma
Very
parte,
good.
né,
Mr. Grush,
mostra a capacidade
you've been
científica.
able to answer in great detail on certain questions, and then other things you say you're not able to respond to. Can you just explain where you're drawing the line? And what's the basis for that?
Yeah, based on my DOPSR security review and what they've determined that is unclassified.
I see. So you're answering any questions that just call upon your knowledge of unclassified questions, but anything that relates to classified matters you're not commenting on in this context.
In an open session, but happy to participate in a closed session at the right level. Yeah.
Okay. And Mr. Graves, you've said that there are dozens of fellow pilots, military pilots. Are there also commercial pilots who've encountered the same kind of sightings that you described before?
They are similar. Commercial pilots have less range and less sensors to be able to reach out and look for objects over wide swaths of airspace. And so pilots are seeing them, commercial pilots are seeing them, and they're typically closer, and the range of what they're seeing is pretty large.
What is the most vivid, concrete sighting with the naked eye of the objects that you described?
Qual a
before,
maior
the
evidência
cubelates objects?
observada a olho
Certainly,
nu?
I think the most vivid sighting of that would have been near midair that we had at the entrance to our working area. One of these objects was completely stationary at the exact entrance to our working areas, not only geographically, but also at altitude. So it was right where all the jets are going, essentially on the eastern seaboard. The two aircraft flew within about 50 feet of the object, and that was a very close visual sighting.
And you were in one of the aircraft?
I was not. I was there when the pilot landed. He canceled the mission
Falando se ele
after.
estava em
I
alguma
was
nave
there.
que
He was in the ready room
interceptou
with all his gear on.
alguma
with his,
nave
belt
alienígena,
open.
ele falou que não,
And I
né?
asked him what the problem was, and he said he almost hit one of those darn things.
He said he was 50 feet away from it?
Yes, sir.
And his description of the object was consistent with
Falando que estava 50
the
pés
description
dele.
you gave us before?
A dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere.
Inside of a clear sphere?
Yes.
Ele viu que ele viu
And
foi
with
ponto
no
preto
self-evident propulsion
dentro de uma
system.
esfera
No wings, no power
brilhante,
energy
vamos dizer
coming off
assim.
of the vehicle.
Ele não viu
nothing
asas,
tethering
ele
it to
não
the ground.
viu
And that
sistemas de
was
propulsão, nem
primarily
nada
what we were
disso.
experiencing out there.
I'm over time. Thank you very much for your service, and I yield back to Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Mr. Burchett?
Estou tentando traduzir aqui
Thank you,
para
Mr. Chairman.
vocês,
This
cara.
is for all three of y'all, starting with Mr. Graves. Why did you come forward on this issue?
I came forward because I felt that my colleagues did not have a way to mitigate this safety threat, and I wanted to help them. I was trained as an aviation safety officer by the Navy, and it just felt right. I felt like I had to help the folks that were still flying and dealing with this.
Mr. Grush?
Purely a sense of duty. My first sworn oath when I was a cadet 18 years ago, and I still uphold that even out of uniform.
Commander?
I was pestered by a friend,
Pô,
and
mano,
I asked
favor.
why, and he said, "You're the one person that they can't discredit, and you'll add credibility to the New York Times article." And so after about 6 times, I said, "Okay."
Eles existem. Isso aí.
This town isn't made, unfortunately, by people like y'all. We thank y'all. And I do want to also thank the people in the audience and the people that are watching this. It can't be people all over the world that have kept this issue alive. You've endured
Agradecendo aí
criticism
pessoas no mundo inteiro que
and
estão.
derogatory remarks, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. So God bless
É,
you.
uma coisa que não pode negar é que esses caras são
Really
corajosos,
appreciate
cara.
you guys
Tá?
and gals.
Isso aí com certeza eles são, né? De colocar a cara e de ir lá.
That's why we need term limits. Y'all keep clapping, those politicians just keep talking. So let me ask y'all, how can the public contribute to UAP reporting? And what avenues you think are available to the public to report these sightings?
Well, right now, I don't think there is a lot of public options for every man to be able to report on this. I think even for professionals that have sensor data that are seeing these on a regular basis, they're still hesitant to come forward. And so for the
Falando,
general
né,
public, I think
perguntou da
encouraging
importância
the
de
conversations
trazer
that we're
tudo
having
isso ao
today,
público, né?
looking for
E
technology
eles
solutions
falando
that can be
que
distributed so that
existem
objective data
pessoas
can
aí
be
que
gathered
existem
is the first place to
sensores,
go.
né, cara? Então a gente poderia usar tudo isso, né?
I'll just touch on the whistleblower side of it. I do encourage, current and former military intelligence community and industry contractors to come forward in a legal way, either through the IC or DoD or whatever the cognizant IGs are, to lead, join me in this discussion.
Falando aí que o
Commander,
lance
and
dele é encorajar
I
as
guess I should
pessoas que já
say this for
tiveram
the
isso
record. My daddy was
a vir para essa
United
discussão.
States Marine Corps, 1st Marine Division. So,
Hoorah.
yes, sir. He was old school, him and Chesty Puller on Pellaloo. So thank you,
wow.
brother.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Um,
I'm not anything like my daddy. He was incredible. I'm very mediocre to say the least, but go
You
ahead.
seem to be doing fine.
Yeah.
For me, I was an accident investigator, so the biggest thing to learn, and I think that witnesses need to do is, one, don't try and make the fish bigger than it was. Stick to the facts, write it down, and don't
Trazer
speculate
isso,
what you
Atos. O
think
cara
it is, because
perguntou, né,
you'll
por
sway
que
your
que é
decision. Just
importante
write the facts down.
trazer tudo
Get
isso
all
ao
the facts
público,
together,
cada
we
um
can
tem a
start to
sua
investigate
opinião
with real
ali.
honest stories
A do
Thank
Grush
you,
é
and I
fazer
wanna
com que
thank
a galera,
everybody. We
né,
made history.
incentivar a galera que
Mr.
já
Chairman,
teve esse
I yield.
tipo de contato vir a público
Thank
mesmo.
you much, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you. I know now we're going to be making some closing remarks, and so I just want us to say a few things. First, to our witnesses, I want to thank all of you for being here with us today.
Agradecendo a
I know
todos os
that
três de
it takes a
estarem aí
lot of
hoje.
courage. You're
Isso
telling
não é cara, isso
really
aí
important information to this
podem
committee,
falar
and
o
I
que
just want to thank
for,
you also for
né? Mas
all
é
three of you, your
ato
service to our
muito de
country.
coragem mesmo.
I
de
also
estarem
want to
aqui,
just note
tá?
that today's hearing was both important but also serious, and I want to thank our subcommittee chairman, Mr. Grothman, I think for running a very fair and substantive hearing. I do want to thank the committee staff on
Tá aí
both sides for
tá agradecendo
the
a
amount of
todo
work
mundo
that's
que
put
esteve
this
aí hoje
hearing, in
participando da
place.
sessão do
And
Congresso
certainly to all the
americano.
members that have been involved in this issue prior to the hearing. I also want to note for our witnesses and for the public that I'm a freshman member of Congress and I've only been here for 7 months.
Que ele é novo ali no
But this is by
Congresso, ele
far
está
the
ali por
most
7 meses
bipartisan
só.
conversation and discussion that I have seen happen in the Congress. And I think that a topic of this significance as it relates to our national security, as it relates to information that we're trying to gather
Falando que
for
esse é tópico muito
the American
importante que está
public,
relacionado
does
com
bring people together, and I think that's
com
really
a
great to
segurança
see.
nacional.
I think it's also important to note for the public, today in our hearing, we had on our side also both our full ranking member, which is Mr. Raskin, and our vice ranking member, which is Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, both here at our hearing. I think it shows the importance and seriousness that
Tá falando aí
our side of the aisle is
como tudo
taking
isso
to
funciona, as
this
pessoas que
important
estão
hearing, but also to the
em
broader
todos
issue as it relates
as
to
etapas aí
working
do
with our
processo.
Republican counterparts on this committee. I want to additionally add that I think, and I think it's really important that we have and continue these discussions
Falando
and
que é
these
muito
hearings.
importante que a
I
gente
want to
continue
really,
tendo
there's a lot of information that we
essas discussões,
but it's also very clear that we have to continue our investigation and accountability on asking the right questions and ensuring that they're
que
part of
tudo
the
isso
public
possa
record.
continuar da melhor
One thing
forma
that was important
possível.
today is some folks might wonder, why are we asking questions that might already be out there or that have been asked before? It's important that they're asked and put into the public record as it relates to this committee. And so I want to thank you for
Falando
answering
aqui
some
pro público
questions
também em
multiple
geral, né,
times. I know, not
essas
just in
questões
maybe
que
meetings
são
you had with some
colocadas são
members,
muito
but also
importantes, né?
here in the public. Let me also just add an additional note that it's important also that our friends in the media and those that are not just reporting on this hearing, but that have reported on this topic and that may in the future, the media has an important role in this process. And it's very important that the media
A
engages,
mídia tem
does
papel
independent
importante nisso aí.
investigation, and
Então
reports
ela,
on not
né,
just what happened
tanto com
today, but
investigações
what they see independently as
independentes.
what's happening around UAPs in the broader community. That is also an important public
A conclusão que eu
benefit
cheguei,
that we have in
nenhuma,
trying
né,
to get
cara?
the information and the facts as it relates to this. Let me also just say,
Cara, aqui não é nem para chegar em conclusão, né? O que que acontece para quem não tá, para quem não está por dentro, né? Agora lá nos Estados Unidos existe uma comissão, um comitê do Congresso norte-americano, que quando acontecem essas coisas, eles aparecem. O Grush falou há 2 meses que ele teve acesso a pessoas que tiveram acesso a corpos alienígenas, a naves alienígenas. Então, e ele falou isso numa entrevista, ele falou isso em vários locais, e aí chamaram ele para essa audiência pública, para ele falar isso mediante essa comissão aí do Congresso americano. Então, eles estão sendo aí arguídos, né, sobre tudo isso, desde o fenômeno do tic-tac, toda essa confusão aí que a gente sabe que deu, até agora com o Grush aí, com esses corpos que foram resgatados, com essas naves e tudo mais. Então, basicamente, aí, a CPI, isso. Bom, aí, ó, o Caio resumiu bem, é a CPI alienígena.
Rachel and Noah sitting behind me here. They're very quiet and humble, but without them, this thing would not have come off.
É uma
like it did,
CPI
so
dos
I
alienígenas, é isso mesmo.
Thank you. I think we're going to want to look into what we can do to make more of this information public. I think there's certainly a time period.
Só que a gente viu, né? O Grush ali, muita coisa ele não pode falar. Então ele dá respostas gerais, né? Generalidades ele fala. Coisas específicas ele vai falar lá depois no privado para essa galera. Então tudo isso é levado em consideração também, tá? Tudo isso é levado em consideração também. Falaram muito do tic-tac. Para quem não sabe o que é o tic-tac, é isso aqui, ó. Quer ver, ó? Tic-tac UAP. Se você escrever aí tic-tac UAP no Google e pedir imagens, você vai ver a famosa imagem do tic-tac. Tá aí, né? Eles acabaram agora aqui a transmissão, tá? Mas o tic-tac é esse cara aqui, ó. Para quem não sabe o que é tic-tac, isso aqui é o tic-tac, tá? Esse aí ficou conhecido como o fenômeno tic-tac, tá bom? Então, falaram muito do fenômeno do tic-tac, né? Falaram muito do Grush, que é o cara que teve acesso a pessoas que tiveram acesso a naves que foram capturadas, e aí teve todo aquele debate, e eles falam muito sobre os relatos, tá? Muita coisa que é vista não é relatada, principalmente pelo fato do estigma. Então, esses caras aí, esses 3 aí, eles estão aí mais para isso também, tá? É para quebrar esse estigma. A pessoa não quer ficar estigmatizada. Deixa eu ver só o finalzinho aqui.
There's certainly a time period after which it should always be made public, and people have been concerned about these issues, like I said, since I was in high school. But in any event, I'd like to thank everybody who was here, sticking through.
Tá aí, agradeceu a todo mundo que estava ali.
Without objection, the members will have 5 legislative days to submit materials and to submit additional written questions for the
Aí, ó, eles têm 5 dias legislativos para poder submeter os materiais, submeter questões adicionais.
The subcommittee stands adjourned.
Tá aí, ó, encerrada a sessão. Foi assim que foi encerrado. Então, é isso, galera, que aconteceu, tá? Só o comecinho aqui que nós vamos ver.
Subcommittee in Congress this week.
Vergonhoso, né? Cara, então, é aquele negócio, né? A gente espera que o cara vai chegar lá no Congresso e mostrar tudo. Ele não pode, ele não vai fazer isso jamais. Então, ele chega ali e fala só generalidades. Coisas específicas eles vão falar agora lá no reservado, tá? Vão falar no reservado. Ele não vai falar nomes, ele não vai falar nada disso. Então, ele só vai falar no reservado para a galera e vamos ver se algum dia eles trazem isso à tona, tá? Mas, assim, vamos lá. Resumindo, né? Resumindo o resumo. 2004, tá? A foto tic-tac, tá? Resumo do resumo. Tic-tac, ele foi fotografado em 2004, tá? O pessoal pensou que hoje eles iam chegar e mostrar tudo, né? Não vão, né? Não vão jamais, tá? Não vão jamais. Então a gente continua naquela mesma situação de sempre, tá? Mas no banheiro, isso mesmo. Mas tinha que acontecer essa audiência, porque se o cara falou isso publicamente, ele tem que defender isso no Congresso americano. E é isso que ele foi lá ser arguído aí por essa comissão. Essa comissão não para, né? E aí vamos ver o que acontece. O tic-tac é o que tem o vídeo, isso. O tic-tac é o que tem o vídeo, tá? O famoso vídeo do tic-tac, tá? Mas assim, de certo modo, é constrangedor, como que eu posso dizer assim, meio que frustrante, né? Porque a gente queria ver uma coisa muito mais legal, né? Mas não vai ter, né, galera? O que vai ter é isso aí, né? É essa encheção de saco aí dos caras falando sobre os UAPs, beleza? Deixa eu ver aqui se tem a galera falando mais alguma coisa. Deixa eu ver aqui como que tá a repercussão disso no Twitter. Uma galera assistiu, né? Mas estavam esperando muito mais, né? A gente estava esperando muito mais. Ó, o John Green aqui, ó. Tem uma galera aqui falando, ó. Vamos ver aqui, ó. O John Greenwald Jr. aqui, ó, falou que para ele a sessão hoje foi melhor do que ele esperava. Muita coisa está por vir. Mas o que você pensa disso? Today, deram historic hit phenomenon, but the news invadiram sobre Hunter Biden. Nem sei o que é isso. O AP principalmente. What do you think about the talk that treats Rússia as AP? Aí tá com aquelas... Isso aqui, ó, de acordo com o que o cara falou, seria a imagem que ele viu, né? Que seria um cubo preto dentro de uma esfera, o Graves aqui, ó. Perguntado sobre, né, o que ele viu, o objeto era estacionário e parecia ser um cubo escuro dentro de uma esfera clara, brilhante. Então, os caras fizeram a imagenzinha aí, tá? Aí tá falando, o pessoal tá elogiando, né? Porque é um lance de abertura de tudo isso, né? Do Congresso americano. Então o pessoal tá aí, como que eu vou dizer? Tá vendo, ó? Uma grande vitória contra o disclosure, né? Ou seja, contra a galera que quer esconder ali as informações, tá? Então isso aí é que tem muita gente falando, tá? Qual a porcentagem de UAPs, né? Isso aqui nós vimos, né? Eles estimam que 5% só que são relatados, isso aí nós já vimos também. Diz o UAP Hearing Air. Os Estados Unidos absolutamente têm posse, o Sempre Guerra que falou, ó, tem posse de naves extraterrestres, de acordo com David Grush, ex-membro de um grupo de trabalho do Departamento de Defesa que investigou o UAPs, tá vendo? Não vai ser isso. Pela primeira vez, que prova both parties can agib tá. Aqui falando, né, que a primeira congresso que é dividido lá tá conjunto. Nós aprendemos alguma coisa do X-Files. The best lie is hidden between two truths. The US do it now, they change tarará. Bem, basicamente foi isso aí, né? Foi isso aí. Sérgio, se existir tal coisa, você acha possível tantas organizações manterem em segredo a existência de vida alienígena sem alguma vazar uma prova? Então, se tem, é isso que está acontecendo, né? Nenhuma está vazando nada porque está tudo lá guardado em segredo. Mas será que tem mesmo? Então, aí fica aquela coisa. O cara viu alguma coisa? Não, ele não viu nada. Pessoas que ele conhece que viram. O outro lá, o Graves, né? Ele sim, ele participou ali do tic-tac, da caça do negócio. O outro lá falou que ele não estava no avião, ele estava em terra, mas quando ele olhou para o céu, ele viu uma esfera, um cubo preto dentro de uma esfera clara. Então, assim, é muito complicado, né, cara? Porque aquele negócio, a gente cai nos relatos. E eles mesmos falam que os relatos não são confiáveis, por N razões. Então, o que a gente precisaria eram de sensores muito bem desenvolvidos nisso. Mas vamos aguardar, beleza? É isso? Acho que é isso, hein? Isso, o Graves, ele era piloto. Ele era o piloto que estava lá. Foi isso que eu falei. O Graves, ele era piloto. Cubo preto dentro de uma esfera clara. Essa imagenzinha aqui, ó. Seria o que ele viu, né? Seria o que ele viu, seria basicamente isso aqui, ó, tá? Raio cubo. Aqui que ele viu um raio bola. Tô brincando, tô brincando. Muito bom. Galera, deixa eu falar aqui para vocês, então, algumas coisas, né? A primeira de todas é que é o seguinte, né? Isso aqui tudo só acontece, tá? Graças a Insider Story, nosso patrocinador. Se você quer que o Space Today continue fazendo esse tipo de conteúdo, ajude a gente, vai lá na Insider agora, 12% de desconto usando o cupom SPACE, tá? Estou aqui com a minha Tech T-shirt, vai lá, adquira a sua. Como eu falei, né, na brincadeira aqui, esses caras devem ter suado pra caramba, e se eles tivessem T-shirt ali por baixo, eles iam ficar confortáveis. Então, essa que é o grande tchan da Tech T-shirt da Insider. Então, vamos lá, ó, o site está aí para vocês, Insider Store, use o cupom SPACE e tenha 12% de desconto, beleza? Tá aí para vocês, valeu Insider, estamos junto demais, muito obrigado. E hoje à noite temos ele, hein? Hoje à noite temos Falcon Heavy, isso mesmo. Então teremos aqui o lançamento do Falcon Heavy logo mais hoje, deixa eu ver aqui que horário. Falcon Heavy está marcado para a 00:04, né? Ou seja, é amanhã. Mas vamos fazer a live começar antes. Então, hoje, 11h30 da noite, temos live aqui no canal do Falcon Heavy com a missão Júpiter 3 e EcoStar 24. Lembrando que é o satélite mais cabuloso, para quem não viu, não sabe do que eu estou falando, tá? É o satélite mais pesado já levado para o espaço. Quer ver só que maneiro? Deixa eu ver onde que eu... Caramba, cadê? Tá lá já, tá de pezinho lá no pé de 39A, e hoje ele leva o satélite. O satélite é um recorde, tá? É o recorde hoje de carga sendo levada pelo Falcon Heavy, um baita de um satélite que está indo para o espaço. Então, a partir de 11h30 da noite, estaremos aqui para mais uma live no Space Today. Beleza? Tranquilo? Então é isso aí. E aí, deixa nos comentários, né? O que vocês acharam dessa coisa toda do Congresso americano aí. Valeu de alguma coisa? Esclareceu alguma coisa? Eu acho que não esclareceu nada, mas eu acho que é importante os caras trazerem isso a público e encorajarem mais pessoas a trazerem. Tá bom? Muito obrigado a todos, valeu demais mesmo. 11h30, live do Falcon Heavy hoje aqui no Space Today. Tá bom? Um grande abraço e fui.